The thought of having to sleep with that fat pig absolutely turns my stomach. Just minutes before the wedding, I heard my son-in-law confess that very thing to his friend, and they both just roared with laughter. My daughter, bless her heart, had absolutely no idea what kind of monster she was about to marry. I stood there for a beat, a faint, ice-cold smile creeping onto my face. That's when I started plotting the trap that would leave him with nothing but the shirt on his back. If you're watching this video right now, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's traveled, you know? The organ music at St. Francis Church, right here in our little Midwestern town, was swelling up, sweet and urgent, filling my ears. It blended with the lively chatter of all the guests. Today was the big day for my daughter, Madison, the little girl I had truly dedicated my entire life to loving and protecting. I was standing near some close family and friends, offering a smile for every one of their congratulations. After a moment, I quietly excused myself to walk toward the back hallway of the church. I just needed a minute to breathe, to get a little fresh air before the ceremony officially started. The hallway was quiet, I tell you. The only sound was the soft tap-tap of my heels on the cold stone floor. I took a deep, shaky breath, feeling the light breeze that carried the smell of dry grass from the nearby fields. But as I passed the groom's preparation room, a loud, vulgar burst of laughter brought me to a dead stop. The door was slightly ajar, and the voice of Ethan, my future son-in-law, sounded clear, arrogant, and frankly, mocking. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floorboards. An icy premonition, like a glass of cold water being poured down my spine, shot through me. I pressed myself against the door, my heart pounding in my ears. Ethan's voice dropped, you see, but every word he spat out was like a knife plunging right into me. Just thinking about tonight, having to sleep with that fat pig already makes me sick. An obscene, satisfied chorus of laughter erupted from the men inside the room. I felt my blood run ice cold, absolutely freezing up inside. Fat pig! He was talking about Madison, my daughter, who I always thought was as beautiful as an angel, with her radiant smile and her warm, giving heart. My chest tightened up instantly, as if someone was physically squeezing my heart until it ached. Another man with a slick, mocking voice clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Come on, at least you're getting the mother-in-law's huge fortune, right?" Ethan's cold, cruel laughter echoed through the hall. "Of course, I'll put up with it for the money. If it weren't for the Chestnut Grove estate, do you think I'd even look at her?" Every single word was like a poison needle piercing my heart one after the other. The Chestnut Grove estate, the legacy that my parents and I had nurtured with our sweat and a lifetime of work, was now just a commodity to him. He wasn't marrying my daughter out of love, not at all. It was pure, vile greed for those fertile lands and the numbers sitting in the bank account. Another man chimed in, a malicious tone in his voice. "On the wedding night, you'll probably have to down a whole bottle of whiskey just to get the job done, right?" The clinking of glasses mixed with their brutal laughter, making the whole world feel like some sick, terrible joke. I clutched the rosewood rosary beads in my hands, those cold, smooth beads I had passed through my fingers thousands of times in prayer. But this time, they couldn't calm the fury that was swelling up inside me. I wanted to burst right in and scream in his face, rip off that hypocritical mask he'd used to deceive my entire family. But my feet truly felt made of stone, and reason, thank goodness for reason, told me to stay calm, at least for Madison's sake. I turned my steps, faltering, and almost bumped right into a guest coming my way. She looked at me with curious, scrutinizing eyes, seeing my face as pale as a sheet, I'm sure. "Mrs. Brooke, are you all right?" she asked, her voice full of a concern that didn't quite hide her curiosity. I forced a smile, shaking my head slightly. "It's nothing, dear. I'm just a little tired." And then I walked quickly toward the bride's room, trying desperately to control the deep trembling that ran through my body. Each step felt like walking on a thin wire, about to snap at any given moment. When I pushed the door open and stepped into the bride's room, a scene of calm unfolded before my eyes. What a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Madison, my beloved daughter, was sitting in front of the mirror, her white wedding dress fitting her body perfectly. She truly looked like an angel. The light from the window illuminated her dark hair, making it shine like scattered stars. The makeup artist was carefully applying blush to her cheeks, while Valerie, Madison's best friend, gently blotted the sweat from her forehead with a tissue. Looking at Madison, I saw myself 30 years ago, on my wedding day with my late husband. But now, the sheer joy of that day had been replaced by an indescribable pain, a heartache you wouldn't wish on anyone. I sank into an armchair, trying to breathe deeply to regain my composure. But my hands were still shaking, my fingers intertwined as if they were trying to hold on to something they couldn't quite grasp. Watching Madison smile and talk so happily with Valerie just broke my heart. She had no idea the man she was about to marry had called her such cruel things. She didn't know that he didn't love her, that it was all a planned charade, a cold-hearted scheme to get his hands on my family's inheritance. I wanted to run and hug her, tell her everything, and protect her from the person who had used her pure love to take advantage of her. But I was also terrified, afraid that if I spoke up, Madison wouldn't believe me. She was so in love with Ethan. She loved him with all her innocent heart. I had seen the sparkle in her eyes every time she mentioned him. I had seen how she laughed with such excitement when she got a message from him. How on earth could I shatter her dream on the most important day of her life? But how could I possibly remain silent when I had heard those cruel words with my own two ears? The only thought that stuck in my mind was a firm command, like a sacred oath. I must protect my daughter, no matter the cost. I took a deep breath, trying to contain the trembling in my chest, and then I looked at the makeup artist and the bridesmaids surrounding Madison. Could you all step out for a moment, please? My voice tried to sound serene, though inside, I was truly a raging sea. I have something private to discuss with Madison. They looked at me in surprise, but then nodded silently and left the room. The door closed, leaving a heavy silence with only Madison, my dear daughter, Valerie, the friend she had always considered a sister, and me remaining. I approached Madison, my trembling hands gently touching her white silk gloves. Her clear eyes looked at me with such trust and innocence, as if she still saw the mother she always turned to for comfort. But today I knew I was about to break her heart into a million pieces. I squeezed Madison's hand tightly, feeling the softness of her skin through the silk. "Madison, listen to me," I began, my voice trembling, but I forced myself to sound firm. "I just heard something I absolutely cannot keep to myself. Ethan, the man you're about to marry, said horrible, truly awful things about you." A lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to continue. He called you a fat pig, Madison. He said he's only marrying you for the Chestnut Grove estate, for the money. He doesn't love you." Madison's eyes widened, the light in them instantly extinguishing. Her lips trembled and her fingers tightened in my hand, as if she were desperately clinging to the hope that I was mistaken. "That can't be." Madison shook her head, her voice weak, almost a whisper. "Mom, you must have misheard. He's not like that. He loves me, Mom. He always tells me I'm beautiful. He's always there for me whenever I feel insecure about myself." Madison's words were like knives stabbing my heart over and over again. I looked at her and clearly saw the naivety and blind faith in her eyes. I remembered the days when Madison was little, when she would run to me crying because her classmates made fun of her weight. I would hold her tight, whispering that she was beautiful in her own way, that her heart was the most valuable thing she had. And now my daughter was trusting a man who had lied, who had used her insecurity to manipulate her. "I'm not mistaken, Madison," I said in a harsh voice, holding back the pure rage that burned inside me. I heard it with my own ears, with his friends. He was mocking you, laughing at you as if you were just a commodity he could trade for money. Madison burst into tears. Hot tears streamed down her cheeks, instantly smudging the makeup the artist had so carefully applied. She shook her head forcefully, her hair adorned with flowers swaying with each sob. No, Mom, you don't understand. He's helped me so much. I've always been insecure about my appearance, you know that. But Ethan, he makes me feel worthy. He says he loves me for who I really am. Madison's voice broke, as if she were trying to convince herself more than me. I drowned in my own pain, my heart squeezed tight. I wanted to hug her, to dry her tears, but I knew that in that moment, only the truth could save her. Honey, I know you love him, I said, softening my tone, but remaining utterly firm. But a man who truly loves you would never call you that. He doesn't deserve you, Madison. You can't give your life to someone like that. Before I could continue, Valerie, who had been completely silent until then, spoke up. Her tone was soft, yes, but sharp as a knife hidden under velvet. Aunt Brooke, I think there's a misunderstanding here, Valerie said, stepping closer to place a hand on Madison's shoulder as if to protect her. From me. I've been by Madison's side this whole time, and I've seen that Ethan truly loves her. He always takes care of her. He's always there for her. If you call off this wedding now, you'll destroy Madison's life. Do you want her to carry that shame forever? I looked at her, and a feeling of unease washed over me. There was something in her eyes and the way she spoke that deeply disturbed me. I had always believed Valerie was a good friend to Madison, someone she could trust. But now, the way she defended him made me doubt everything. Why was she so firmly on Ethan's side? Why was she trying so hard to convince Madison right in front of me? Madison rested her head on Valerie's shoulder, crying inconsolably. "Mom, don't you want me to be happy?" she sobbed, her voice choked. "You always say you want me to stay on the ranch with you forever. Are you just afraid of losing me, so you're making things up?" Madison's words were a knife straight to my heart, the deepest cut of all. I stood there, frozen, utterly unable to believe my own daughter thought that of me. "Madison, how can you say that?" I whispered, my voice broken. "All my life, I've only wanted you to be happy. I've sacrificed everything, working tirelessly on the ranch so you could have a better life. How can you think your mother is so selfish?" But Madison didn't answer. She just hugged Valerie tightly, as if she was the only one who understood her in that moment. I stood there feeling like a complete stranger in my own family story. I raised Madison. I held her on so many nights when she cried from loneliness. I taught her to stand strong against the world's criticism. And now, my daughter chose to believe a friend over her own mother.
At that moment, the church bells rang out, solemn and urgent, a brutal reminder that time waits for no one. A bridesmaid knocked on the door, her voice rushed and excited. "Come on, quickly, the priest and everyone are waiting. Madison, you have to come out right now." The room seemed to snap to life, and the bells pulled me out of the nightmare that was crushing my heart. Valerie acted immediately. She grabbed a tissue and dried Madison's tears, whispering something in her ear. "Don't let your mother distract you, Madison. This is your day, the day you've dreamed of for so long. Go out there, beautiful and proud." Her voice was soft, but I felt a hidden pressure, as if she were shoving Madison down a path I knew would only bring pain. Madison took a deep breath, stood up, and adjusted the skirt of her white dress. She looked in the mirror quickly, wiped away the mascara smudges on her cheeks, and then turned to leave without even looking at me once. Every step my daughter took on that marble floor was like a hammer blow to my chest. I wanted to scream, to stop her, but my feet were frozen. I could only stand there, motionless, in the empty room, my heart utterly crushed. My daughter had decided to believe an outsider over her own mother? Valerie followed Madison, but before closing the door, she gave me a look. For an instant, I saw a strange glint in her eyes, a triumphant coldness I couldn't understand. The wedding went on as if the cruel words I had heard in the groom's room were just a passing nightmare. I sat in the front row of the church, where the light from the stained glass windows fell onto the red carpet of the aisle. But for me, everything was a blur, covered in an icy fog. Madison walked on Ethan's arm, moving slowly, her smile radiant, but so naive. Every step on that red carpet was like an invisible knife cutting my heart. I clutched the rosary in my hands, fighting not to cry, not to stand up and scream the truth in front of everyone. But I couldn't. I could only stand there, motionless, watching my daughter give her life to a man I knew was a wolf in sheep's clothing. The wedding reception was held in the garden of an old estate, where yellow fairy lights hung from the branches of the mango trees, creating a warm, romantic atmosphere. The cheerful sound of a string quartet mixed with the laughter of the guests and the clinking of champagne glasses. The tables were filled with traditional dishes, steaming tamales, rich mole poblano, and carefully decorated stuffed peppers. But to me, it was all a ridiculous farce, a stage scene to hide the disgusting truth I had witnessed. I stood silently in a corner, a glass of lukewarm orange juice in my hands, my eyes fixed on Ethan. He moved from table to table, a perfect smile plastered on his face, shaking hands, raising his glass for toasts, playing the role of a successful young businessman and a loving husband perfectly. No one watching him could possibly suspect that behind that flawless facade hid a cruel and ambitious soul. I took a deep breath, trying to gather the courage to approach Madison. She was with some friends. Her white wedding dress glowed under the lights. Her smile was still radiant, but I could see the fatigue in her eyes. I wanted to pull her aside for a moment, to tell her I was still there, that I wouldn't give up on protecting her. But before I could take a step, Valerie appeared, quick as a shadow. She clung to Madison's arm and pulled her away with a fake, conciliatory smile. "Aunt Brooke, let Madison enjoy her day," Valerie said, in a sweet but sharp voice, like a warning. "Don't make her worry anymore, okay?" I froze, as if I'd been slapped hard across the face. Her words were an invisible wall, physically pushing me away from my daughter. I could only nod, press my lips together tightly, and return to my seat, my heart as heavy as lead. Just a few days after the wedding, when the glow of the celebration had well and truly faded, a cruel rumor began to spread throughout our small town. I first heard it at the local market, where I always bought my vegetables and spices. The homemakers, women I had seen for years, started whispering behind my back when I passed.
"That Mrs. Chestnut is so difficult," one said, loud enough for me to hear. "With so many demands, no wonder she scared off all her daughter's suitors." Another laughed dismissively. "They say she even made things up to ruin her own daughter's wedding just because she didn't want to lose her." I stopped by a stall of dried chilies, gripping the handle of my basket tightly, feeling my blood boil instantly. I wanted to turn around, confront them, scream that it wasn't a lie, that all I ever wanted was to protect my daughter. But I didn't. I just lowered my head and hurried out of the market, feeling like the entire town was watching me with pure contempt. The worst part, believe me, was returning to the Chestnut Ranch, where I had lived my whole life, where I had poured my sweat and tears to maintain the family legacy. The neighborhood kids whom I used to give candy to at parties would run past the gate and shout, "Fat pig! Fat pig!" They were the very same words Ethan had said in the prep room, now repeated by childish voices sharp as little blades. I stood frozen at the entrance, watching the children run away as their cruel laughter echoed in the twilight. In that moment, I finally understood. It had all gone too far. Ethan not only hadn't denied his insults, but he turned them into a cruel joke to humiliate me, to paint me as a selfish and overbearing mother in everyone's eyes. But what broke my heart the most was thinking about who had leaked that information. It could only be Valerie. I remembered her triumphant look in the bride's room, the way she so quickly sided with Ethan, the way she convinced Madison that I was wrong. Valerie, whom I once considered a second daughter, whom I welcomed into my home, with whom I shared family meals, was now betraying me, betraying Madison. I felt as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet, as if all the trust I ever had in people's goodness had completely vanished. One evening, I decided to visit Madison's house unannounced. I drove through the familiar streets, my heart heavy with the desperate hope of seeing my daughter, of talking to her like we used to. But as I entered the living room of their new house, I saw Valerie sitting there calmly, sipping a glass of red wine, chatting confidently with Ethan. They were laughing, talking as if they shared a secret I had no right to know. Seeing me, Valerie immediately stood up and moved to block my path, a forced smile on her face. "Hello, Mrs. Brooke," she said with a haughty tone, as if I were an unwelcome guest. "Madison is resting. She's feeling a bit tired. Don't bother her anymore. She needs her peace." I stood frozen. Valerie's words were like an iron wall, physically separating me from my daughter. I looked into her eyes, trying to find a trace of the girl I once knew, the one who used to sleep over at my house, who would hug Madison and cry with her on difficult days. But now I only saw a stranger, someone who clearly wanted to force me out of Madison's life for good. A week after the wedding, I still couldn't shake the feeling of unease that haunted me constantly. Every night I would lie in the old wooden bed in my room at the ranch, but sleep no longer came as easily as it used to. I knew I couldn't stand by and do nothing. I couldn't let my daughter fall into a whirlwind of lies without a fight. So one late afternoon, as the golden light spilled over the garden in front of Madison's house, I decided to visit her unannounced again. Maybe I hoped to find a moment to talk to her, to bring her back to me, back to the truth. I drove along the winding roads that led to Madison's new house, my heart heavy. The house was set in a small garden with meticulously cared for rose bushes, creating a picture that was almost too perfect to be real. I got out of the car, took a deep breath to calm myself, and knocked on the door. The door opened and Madison appeared, her hair tied back, her face tired, but with a faint smile when she saw me. "Mom, why didn't you let me know you were coming?" she asked in a soft but slightly uncomfortable tone. I just smiled, trying my best to hide the tension inside. "I just wanted to stop by and see how you are," I replied as I walked into the living room. But as soon as I stepped into the house, I felt that something was seriously wrong. Ethan was sitting at the desk in the corner with a thick stack of papers in front of him. Madison was beside him, signing page after page, the pen flying quickly over the paper without any hesitation. Not a second to read, to think. I frowned, a chill running down my spine. "What are you signing, Madison?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but without taking my eyes off that pile of documents. Ethan looked up, the smile on his lips not quite reaching his eyes. They looked cold and calculating. "It's just some minor paperwork for a subsidiary company, Mom," he said in a voice so smooth it seemed utterly rehearsed. "It's nothing important." I moved closer, trying to look over Madison's shoulder to get a better view of what she was signing. "Why does your company need Madison to sign?" I questioned, my voice starting to harden. I wasn't a businesswoman, but I wasn't a fool either. The stacks of papers, Ethan's evasive attitude, everything made me suspicious. He leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and his tone became annoyed. "Spouses are supposed to support each other, Mom," he said, emphasizing the word spouses as if to remind me of my place. "After all, we're a family." I looked at Madison, hoping she would say something, ask a question, but she just glanced at me for a moment, her eyes pleading with me not to escalate the tension. Then she looked down again and continued signing, as if the papers truly were trivial and unimportant. My heart was pounding. The feeling of unease had instantly turned into a burning flame in my chest. I knew I had to do something, to act before it was too late. Luckily, at that very moment, Ethan's phone rang. He frowned, got up, and went out to the balcony to take the call, leaving Madison and me alone in the living room. But just a few seconds later, Madison also got up and murmured, "I'm just going to the bathroom for a moment, Mom. Stay here." I nodded, forcing a smile, but in my head, a bold plan was already forming. As soon as the bathroom door closed, I acted. My heart hammered against my ribs as if trying to escape my chest. I rushed to the desk and opened the stack of documents. Even though I didn't understand law or business, I recognized words that made my blood run cold. Total power of attorney, mortgage of assets, loan guarantees. The name of the Chestnut Ranch appeared over and over again on every page, like a red flashing warning sign. This wasn't minor paperwork, as Ethan had claimed. It was a conspiracy, a clear plan to seize the inheritance my family had built with sweat and tears for generations. With trembling hands, I took out my phone, activated the camera, and photographed every single page as quickly as I could. The sound of running water in the bathroom was like a ticking clock, urging me to move faster. Every click of the screen was a lash on my heart. Fear of being discovered and pure, blinding rage at Ethan's betrayal. I carefully reordered the documents, making sure every detail was back in its place, and rushed back to the sofa, pretending to check my phone right as Madison came out. She looked at me, smiled weakly. "Mom, are you okay? You look a little tense," she said in a concerned tone. I wanted to scream, to tell her everything, to beg her to stop signing immediately, but I knew that if I did, she wouldn't believe me. She would think I just wanted to ruin her happiness again. "I'm fine, honey," I replied, my voice soft, even though my heart ached terribly. "I'm just a little tired." Ethan returned, that same fixed smile plastered on his lips. "Is Mom staying for dinner?" he asked, his eyes as cold as ice. I shook my head, making up an excuse on the spot. "I have to get back to the ranch. There are things to do. I'll stay longer next time." I stood up. I hugged Madison with all my strength, trying to hide the tears that were threatening to fall. "I love you, honey," I whispered in her ear, hoping she could feel the desperation in my voice. Madison nodded, but her gaze remained distant, as if an invisible wall had been built firmly between us. On the way back to the ranch, the images of the numbers and shady clauses in that stack of papers kept replaying in my mind. I remembered the days of my childhood, when my father would take me through the endless mango groves, teaching me to care for each tree, each piece of land. "This is our family's blood, Brooke," he used to say, with a voice full of pride. "You have to protect it, no matter what." And now that legacy was in grave danger, not because of natural disasters or changing times, but because of my daughter's naivety and the ambition of the man she called her husband. As soon as I got to the ranch, I ran straight to the study, turned on the computer, and called Mr. Douglas, the lawyer who had served my family for so many years. He was the man my father trusted, the one who helped us overcome countless legal difficulties. I emailed him all the photos I had taken, along with a brief message. "Mr. Douglas, please review these. I have a very bad feeling about this." I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that what I had just done could change everything, that I was entering a battle I wasn't sure I could win. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, just as the first light of dawn was breaking over the ranch's mango fields. I hadn't been able to sleep a wink. The numbers and suspicious clauses in those documents kept swirling in my head like a constant warning. I made a cup of black coffee and sat by the window, looking out at the fields, trying to calm myself down. But inside, I was still a bundle of nerves. Pure rage at Ethan's betrayal and fear for Madison's future. I knew that if I didn't act immediately, everything my family had built could crumble in an instant. So I put on an old sweater, grabbed the car keys, and drove straight to Mr. Douglas's office in the center of town. Mr. Douglas's office was on the second floor of an old building with stained walls and a familiar smell of paper and ink hanging in the air. Wooden shelves crammed with yellowed files gave a sense of trust, as if the place had witnessed the joys and sorrows of many families. I sat in a worn leather chair across from Mr. Douglas's oak desk. He, with his completely white hair and glasses slipping down his nose, looked at me over the photos I had sent him the night before. His eyes reflected sadness, but his voice maintained its usual calm. "Mrs. Brooke," he began, shaking his head regretfully, "your feeling was absolutely right. These are very dangerous power of attorney documents. With Madison's signature, Ethan has absolute control to use the assets and reputation of the Chestnut Ranch as collateral to take out loans, mortgage property, and even sell a portion of it." His words were like a hammer blow straight to my heart. I felt the room spin, and I gripped the arms of the chair until my knuckles turned white. "Absolute control," I repeated, my voice trembling, as if I couldn't believe it. "You mean he can take everything with just Madison's signature?" He nodded, his gaze heavy with gravity. He turned a few more pages and his voice softened, trying to cushion the harshness of the truth. "Worse yet, I discovered that Tyler Sanchez, Ethan's cousin, also appears in some of the addendums. They've used the Chestnut family name to secure multi-million-dollar loans from major banks in Chicago." I shivered, feeling a cold draft run down my spine. Tyler Sanchez. The name wasn't unfamiliar. I had seen him a couple of times, a tall, heavy-set man with restless eyes who always appeared alongside Ethan at parties. "What do you mean by that, Mr. Douglas?" I asked in a hoarse voice, almost a whisper. "If Ethan's businesses fail, what will happen?" He looked me straight in the eye without looking away. "Exactly that, Mrs. Brooke. If his businesses fail, all the debt will fall squarely on Madison and your family. The bank didn't lend him money because they trusted Ethan, but because they trusted the Chestnut brand, the reputation your family has built for generations." I shot up from my seat, unable to stay still. I paced back and forth in the small room, my heels clacking on the wooden floor in rhythm with the car horns outside, like hammers pounding on my temples. I thought of the ranch, of those mornings when my father would take me through the rows of mango trees, teaching me to care for each piece of land. "This is our blood, Brooke," he used to say, with pride. "It's not just land. It's history. It's the trust of the people who work for us." And now all of that was in danger because of someone I once called my son-in-law. I turned to Mr. Douglas, my voice trembling, but now full of determination. "What are we going to do, Mr. Douglas? I can't let him destroy my family." He adjusted his glasses and spoke calmly but firmly. "For now, we must remain absolutely calm, Mrs. Brooke. You can't let Ethan realize you've discovered everything. If he suspects anything, he'll try to hide evidence or speed up his plan. We need more evidence. We need time to completely unmask his conspiracy." He tapped the desk as if to emphasize his point. "I'll start looking into transactions related to Tyler Sanchez and the banks. But you must keep observing. You must keep contact with Madison. Do not let her sign any more documents." I nodded, though inside I felt a whirlwind of emotions. I was furious, helpless, terrified. How was I going to convince Madison when she had decided to trust Ethan and Valerie over me? How could I possibly protect her if she didn't even want to be protected? I left Mr. Douglas's office and found myself on the bustling streets of town. The noise of the cars, of the street vendors, was a chaotic mess of sounds that couldn't drown out the frantic beating of my heart. On the way back to the ranch, I couldn't stop thinking about the workers who had been with my family for generations. I pictured them there under the scorching sun, watering, harvesting mangoes, caring for each tree as if it were their own. They trusted me, the Chestnut family, just as my parents had trusted them. My chest tightened at the thought that all of it could be lost just because of Madison's naivety and Ethan's ambition. I gripped the steering wheel tightly and swore to myself that I wouldn't let it happen. The lifelong efforts of my parents and my own were not going to go up in smoke because of a scammer. That night, I tossed and turned in the old wooden bed, the faint moonlight filtering through the gap in the curtains and casting patterns on the ceiling. The wind rustling through the mango trees sounded like whispers of warning, keeping me from sleep. The numbers and clauses from the papers I had photographed replayed in my head, a constant reminder that time was running out. I knew I couldn't rely solely on those photos. I couldn't just trust that Mr. Douglas would find a way to protect Madison and the ranch. I needed clearer proof. I needed a truth strong enough to expose Ethan's whole scheme. And so, in the heavy silence of the night, I made a decision I never would have imagined. I would hire a private investigator. I contacted Mr. Douglas the next morning, my voice trembling as I asked if he knew someone trustworthy who could help me dig deeper into this matter. He didn't hesitate to recommend Mr. Isaac Hayes, a former police investigator with over 20 years of experience, whom he trusted like a friend. "If anyone can uncover the truth, it's Isaac," he said in a firm voice. I arranged to meet Isaac at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town, a place where no one knew me, to avoid the curious glances of the townspeople. When I arrived, Isaac was already there, a middle-aged man with a weathered face and piercing eyes that seemed to see right through any secret. He greeted me with a slight nod and got straight to the point. "What do you want me to investigate, Mrs. Brooke? I need all the information you have." I told him everything, from Ethan's humiliating remarks at the wedding to the stack of suspicious papers Madison had signed. I handed him the photos I had taken in secret, my voice breaking with a mixture of anger and helplessness. Isaac listened without interrupting, carefully, taking notes in a small notebook. "He'll start immediately," he said, his tone calm but firm. "Leave it in my hands. I'll have the first results in a few days." I nodded, feeling as if a part of the burden had been lifted from my shoulders, although deep down, I knew the truth Isaac would bring me could hurt even more. Just 3 days later, Isaac called me to a small hotel in the city center. When I entered the private room he had rented, he placed a thick, carefully sealed brown envelope in front of me. "You should prepare yourself," he said with a serious look. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, and what I found inside made the blood in my veins run cold. A series of photographs appeared. Ethan, with his typical arrogant smile, holding hands with a young, beautiful, and elegant woman. They were coming out of luxury restaurants in Chicago, from exclusive shops, carrying bags with shiny logos. In one of the photos, he was holding her tenderly by the waist, as if Madison, my daughter, had never even existed. Rage exploded in my chest, so intense I could barely breathe. "Who is she?" I asked in a hoarse voice. Isaac adjusted his glasses, his tone grave and cautious. "Her name is Chloe Vance, an employee at a bank in Chicago. I've been following them for several days. They meet frequently, not just in public places, but also in an apartment Ethan rented under the company's name." He paused as if to give me time to process it. "But that's not all. I have something you need to hear." He handed me a small USB drive with a look that seemed to warn that what I was about to hear would change everything. I went back to the ranch, locked the study door, and plugged the USB into the computer. My heart was pounding as if it already knew that what I was about to hear would shatter what little hope I had left. Ethan's familiar voice came through, cold and raw like a sharp knife. That Madison girl is so easy to fool. As long as she signs the papers, the entire Chestnut family fortune will soon be in our hands. And her old mother, who always pretends to be so smart, will end up in tears when she signs her own ranch's bankruptcy papers. Madison will convince her. You'll see. She loves her daughter so much. Chloe's shrill laughter echoed like a deeper cut in my chest. "You're a genius," she said, her tone sarcastic. "Putting up with a little pig for a fortune is worth it." They both burst out laughing. That wild laughter reverberated in the room and made me tremble with rage. I quickly wiped away the angry tear that escaped, clutching my rosary until my knuckles turned white. Those words weren't just a betrayal of Madison. They were a slap in the face to me, to the love I had given my daughter. I wanted to scream, to destroy everything. But I knew that anger couldn't save Madison. I needed to act. I needed proof and a plan. Isaac continued his report, his voice monotonous but heavy with weight. "I've discovered an important detail, Mrs. Brooke. Ethan has a major conflict with his own brother, Wesley. They say they once fought almost to the death over money. Wesley was Ethan's partner, but Ethan cheated him. He took a large sum of money and left Wesley's family in ruins. If you need a witness, Wesley could be the key." Isaac's words were like a ray of hope in the darkness. I looked at him with a determined gaze, though my heart still ached. "You're right. If Wesley knows the truth about Ethan, he could help me. Do you know where Wesley is?" Isaac nodded and gave me a piece of paper with the address of a dive bar on the outskirts of town. "He's a regular there," he said. "But you have to be careful. Wesley isn't easy to deal with, especially when talking about his brother." I held the paper, feeling like I had grasped a fragile but valuable opportunity. I said in a firm voice, "Keep watching him. I need to know everything he does, where he goes, and I will go find Wesley." Isaac nodded, and I could see in his eyes that he understood I was betting everything on this fight. "I'll do my best, Mrs. Brooke. Trust me." With the paper containing the address of the bar from Isaac, I got in the car, determined, but also deeply worried. The road to the bar was narrow and winding, flanked by dry fields and small shacks. As I pushed the door open and entered, the smell of cheap liquor and cigarette smoke hit my nose, mixed with the sad ranchera song coming from an old speaker. The bar was dark, only a few dim yellow bulbs hung from the ceiling. I looked around, searching for Wesley, who Isaac said was a regular, drowning his sorrows in alcohol almost every day. And indeed, I found him in the darkest corner of the bar, sitting alone in front of a half-empty beer bottle. Wesley looked worn out. His face was etched with deep wrinkles, as if life had taken too much from him. His eyes were cloudy, heavy with sadness, but they still held a sharp glint like someone who has endured great suffering. I took a deep breath, approached, and pulled up a chair to sit across from him. "Hello," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm, though my heart was pounding. "I'm Brooke Chestnut, Ethan's mother-in-law. His brother's." He looked up, weariness and despair etched on his face. He gave a faint, unfriendly smile. "Did you come to defend that son of a—" His voice was full of bitterness. "If so, leave. I don't want to hear anything about him."
I felt the hatred in every word he spoke, but instead of intimidating me, it gave me hope. If Wesley hated Ethan so much, maybe he was the key to exposing him. "No," I replied, my voice firm, without looking away from him. "I came because I, like you, am a victim of his." Wesley frowned, surprised for a moment, but said nothing. He simply motioned for me to continue. I took the brown envelope Isaac had given me from my bag and placed it on the table. "You need to see this," I said, lowering my voice. "This is evidence of what Ethan is doing to my daughter, to my family." I opened the envelope and took out the photos of Ethan with Chloe Vance, the woman he was involved with in Chicago. I pushed them towards Wesley, one by one, as if I were peeling away his brother's mask, layer by layer. Wesley took them, his hands trembling as he saw Ethan hugging Chloe, laughing in luxurious restaurants. "That bastard," he muttered, his voice thick with fury. I took out my phone and played the recording Isaac had made. Ethan's voice sounded cold and raw. "That Madison girl is a stupid, easy target. If she just signs the papers, the entire chestnut fortune will soon be in our hands." Chloe's crystal-clear laughter was like another knife twisting in my gut. "You're a genius," she said. "Putting up with a fat little pig for a fortune is worth it." The more he listened, the darker Wesley's face became. He gripped the bottle tightly, the veins on his hands standing out as if they were about to burst. When the recording finished, he looked up at me, his eyes red. Whether from the alcohol or indignation, I couldn't tell. "He never changed," Wesley said, his voice filled with emotion and resentment. "He scammed us out of all our savings, left us ruined. My father had a stroke from the despair and died. My mother became gravely ill from the pain, and not once did he show up at the house. I swore I would never forgive him." Wesley's words were like an icy wind, but at the same time, they ignited a spark of hope in me. I realized he wasn't just a witness, he was someone who shared my pain. Another person betrayed by Ethan. "I know you've suffered a lot because of him," I said, softening my voice but remaining firm. "And so have I. He's taking advantage of my daughter Madison to take over my family's ranch, but I'm not going to let him win. Mr. Wesley, I need your help. Come forward and testify. Help me bring him to justice. I'm not just doing this to get the property back. More importantly, I'm doing it to save my daughter." Wesley remained silent, his gaze fixed on the beer bottle in front of him. I could see he was waging an internal battle between the pain of the past and his doubt about what I was proposing. The bar suddenly fell silent. Only the distant, sad ranchera music remained. I waited, not daring to press him, but with my heart pounding as if every second that passed was a fleeting opportunity. Finally, Wesley looked up, his eyes now cold and determined. "All right," he said in a firm voice. "I'll tell them everything. I'll help you." I nodded, feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. "Thank you," I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. "We'll stop him together." Wesley didn't answer, just tilted his head. But in his eyes, I recognized the same determination that was in mine. We, two people hurt by the same man, had become allies in a relentless battle. With irrefutable evidence in our hands, I felt as if I were wielding a sharp sword ready to cut through all the lies. Mr. Douglas, with the caution and firmness of an experienced lawyer, filed a lawsuit on my behalf against Ethan and his accomplices, including Tyler Sanchez, for fraud, embezzlement, and breach of trust. I knew this trial wasn't just a legal fight, but also a chance to reclaim justice for Madison, for the Chestnut Ranch, and for my own pride.
On the day of the trial, I woke up early, as dawn was just breaking over the mango fields. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple white blouse and long skirt I had chosen to project calm, but also firmness. Inside, I was nervous, anxious, as if I were about to enter a battle I didn't know if I could win. But when I thought of Madison, of the innocence in her eyes, and Ethan's humiliations, I clutched the rosary in my hands and told myself, I have to do this for my daughter. The courtroom of the state of Michigan was packed. It seemed the whole town had come, from the farmhands who had worked on my ranch to the homemakers from the market and the neighbors who used to whisper behind my back. A murmur of curiosity and tension filled the air. I sat in the front row next to Mr. Douglas, trying to maintain a serene expression, though my heart was pounding in my chest. Ethan and Tyler walked into the courtroom with their usual arrogant confidence. Ethan wore a tailored suit, a smug smile on his face, as if he believed no one could touch him. Tyler followed, his eyes darting around nervously, though he feigned calm. I watched them, feeling the blood boil in my veins. But when my eyes met Madison's, the pain shot through me again. I saw her walk in with Valerie, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. Madison avoided my gaze, her head down, her dark hair falling over her face. Valerie held her hand and whispered something to her, but I could see the confusion in my daughter's every gesture. She looked like a trapped little bird, not knowing which way to fly. The judge, a middle-aged man with a stern face, banged his gavel to start the trial. Mr. Douglas stood up and presented the case with a clear, forceful voice. He detailed Ethan's conspiracy, from tricking Madison into signing power of attorney documents to leveraging the Chestnut Ranch's prestige to obtain huge loans. Every word he spoke was like an arrow hitting its mark, causing a stir throughout the courtroom. But the moment that truly took my breath away was when Mr. Douglas asked to play the recording Isaac had obtained. When Ethan's voice echoed through the speakers, the entire room erupted. That Madison fool is easy to manipulate. As long as she signs the papers, the entire Chestnut inheritance will soon be in our hands. The insults of fat pig, the plans to seize the assets, everything was laid bare before dozens of disbelieving eyes. Murmurs of outrage spread like a rising tide. I looked at Madison and saw her frozen, her eyes wide with horror. She stared at Ethan as if she couldn't believe the man she loved could say such words. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. Valerie, sitting beside her, quickly whispered something to her, squeezing the girl's hand tightly as if to hold her back. But Madison, in an unexpected moment, pulled her hand away from Valerie's and said in a trembling but firm voice, "No, Valerie, don't say anything." I saw Valerie's bewildered expression, the fake smile vanishing from her lips. I felt a small sense of relief, though the pain was still there. Madison was hurt, and despite all my attempts to warn her, I couldn't prevent this moment. The climax of the trial came when Wesley took the stand. He looked very different from the last time I saw him in the bar. Today, he wore a clean shirt, his hair was combed, though his face still bore the marks of suffering. He began to speak in a hoarse, emotional voice. "I am Ethan's brother," he said, scanning the courtroom before his eyes landed on his brother. "But I'm not here to defend him. I'm here to tell the truth. He cheated my family and took all the savings my parents had gathered their entire lives. My father, out of desperation, suffered a stroke and died, and my mother is now in the hospital with no money for treatment. It was all because of Ethan." The courtroom fell silent. The only sound was Wesley's voice, heavy as a tombstone. He told how Ethan promised investments and then fled with the money, how he begged his brother to come back and only received silence. "He has no heart," he said, his voice breaking. "He doesn't care about anyone but himself." I looked at Ethan and saw him shouting furiously, "You're lying! You're just jealous of me!" But his shouts were drowned out by the indignation in the room. For the first time, I saw absolute panic in the eyes of the man who had always believed himself a winner. After the closing arguments, when Mr. Douglas concluded with a powerful call for justice, a deep silence fell over the courtroom. The judge, with a stern face, scanned the room until his eyes rested on Madison. "Miss Madison Chestnut," he said in a grave, clear voice, "do you have anything you wish to say before the court passes sentence?" The whole room held its breath. I looked at Madison. My heart stopped beating. She stood up, trembling, resting her hands on the back of the seat for support. I saw her lips pressed together, her gaze flicking over Ethan, and then stopping on me for just a moment, but long enough for me to see the pain and determination in her eyes. "I was deceived," Madison said, her voice trembling, but now full of firmness. "I trusted someone who didn't deserve it. I want a divorce." Her words sounded like thunder, reverberating through the silent courtroom. The entire court erupted in murmurs, but I could only hear the frantic beating of my own heart. I looked at Ethan and saw him jerk his head up, his eyes full of surprise and panic. His face turned pale as if the life had been drained from him. Ethan, I saw him try to turn his head, searching for Madison's gaze, but she wouldn't look at him. The officers escorted them towards the exit, and as the door opened, I saw Chloe Vance, Ethan's mistress, waiting for him in the hallway. She stood with her arms crossed in a stunning dress, smiling with contempt. "I want nothing to do with a failure, so this is goodbye. You're useless to me now." With that, she turned and walked away, the clicking of her heels on the stone floor echoing like a final declaration. Ethan screamed in desperation, but his voice faded as the door closed. I looked at Valerie, who was quietly gathering her bag, her head bowed, trying to slip out unnoticed. The scornful gazes of those present, of her former neighbors and friends, followed her like needles piercing her skin. I felt no satisfaction watching her like this. Instead, a deep sadness washed over me. Valerie had been a part of Madison's life. I had welcomed her into my home like a daughter, but now she was nothing but a shadow, someone who chose to be on the wrong side. When the trial ended, I went to Madison. She stood there, her shoulders shaking, her gaze lost. I took her hand and felt how cold her fragile fingers were. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't listen to you," her voice broken. I hugged her tightly, letting her cry her heart out on my shoulder. I felt her hot tears soak my clothes, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like my little girl was back, the one who would run to me every time she fell. We walked out of the courthouse hand in hand under a sun so bright it was blinding. Its rays lit up the stone path as if opening a new road for both of us. I looked at Madison and still saw sadness in her eyes, but also a glimmer of relief. "Mom, I want to go home, to the ranch." I nodded, squeezing her hand tightly, feeling like I had gotten a piece of my heart back. A few weeks after the trial, Madison's divorce request was officially approved by the court. I received the news from Mr. Douglas in a brief call. His voice was soft, but he couldn't hide his joy. "Mrs. Brooke, all the paperwork is complete. Madison is now free." I nodded, though he couldn't see me, feeling as if a great stone had been lifted from my chest. I stood on the porch of the house, looking out at the endless mango fields, and for the first time in many months, I felt a bit of peace. Madison, my daughter, had decided to come back to live at the Chestnut Ranch, her true home, where I had raised her with all my love and hope. The first day Madison came back, I saw her standing in the middle of the mango orchard, where the rows of fruit-laden trees swayed gently in the wind. The morning light shone on her dark hair, making the dewdrops on the leaves glisten. Madison took a deep breath, as if wanting to fully absorb the smell of the damp earth, the scent of mango blossoms, and her newfound freedom. She turned to me, her eyes full of tears and her voice trembling. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Forgive me for not believing you, for leaving you to face all that alone." Her words pierced me like a knife, but it wasn't pain. It was a mixture of sadness and joy. I went to her, hugged her tightly, and stroked her trembling back. "It's okay, my child," I whispered, my voice choked. "The important thing is that you're home now. You and I will start over together." In the following days, life on the ranch began to return to its rhythm, but with a new nuance. Madison was no longer the naive, fragile girl from before. She began to learn how to manage the ranch with me, and I was genuinely surprised by her intelligence and quickness. She would spend hours at the desk, reviewing account books, learning to negotiate with merchants, and even personally signing large export contracts to the United States and Canada. I watched her, her gaze focused, her hands turning the pages, and I felt like I was seeing the woman I myself had been 30 years ago. A strong woman, ready to support the entire family. The ranch workers, people who had been with my family for generations, welcomed Madison with joy. They called her the young boss, just as they used to call me when I was young. They would smile as she passed, showing her how to check the ripeness of a mango or how to care for the land so the trees would grow healthy. Ms. Madison is just like Mrs. Brooke, an older worker said, his eyes full of pride. She will continue to bring prestige to the Chestnut family. Those words warmed my heart, as if my parents' legacy had found the worthy heir it had been waiting for. The community in town also began to see me differently. The malicious whispers that used to be heard in the market gave way to compassion and respect. One morning, while I was picking out dried chilies, a homemaker who used to talk behind my back approached me with an apologetic voice. "Mrs. Brooke, I apologize for believing the rumors. You are a strong mother, and we are proud of you." I just smiled and nodded gently. "Thank you," I replied calmly. "Whenever you like, I invite you to visit the ranch." I opened the gates of the farm, inviting everyone to get to know it as a way to heal the rifts the gossip had left. And every time I saw their smiles as they tasted the sweet mangoes, I knew I had chosen the right path. As for Valerie, she quietly left town right after the trial. No one knew where she went, and the name Valerie gradually disappeared from the stories in our town as if she had never existed. I felt no satisfaction at her departure, only a slight sadness. Valerie had been a part of Madison's life. I'd even loved her like a daughter, but she chose to be on the wrong side, and now she had to face the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Madison began to change, not just in how she managed the farm, but in how she saw herself. One afternoon, she shyly told me she wanted to sign up for a weight loss program. "It's not because I want to please anyone," Madison said, her gaze firm. "It's because I want to love myself more, to be healthier, so I can build the farm with you." I nodded, proud to the point of tears. Every morning, I watched Madison get up early, run along the paths between the fields, sweat glistening on her forehead, but with a radiant smile. She was reclaiming her essence, and I knew that was her greatest victory. One cool morning, when the air was still soft and smelled of mango blossoms, Madison and I walked among the fruit-laden trees. The birds singing mixed with the sound of the wind in the leaves, creating a serene music. Madison stopped, looked out at the fields, and then spoke to me with a determined voice. "I will never let anyone deceive me again, Mom. I will be by your side to protect and grow what our grandparents and parents built. This farm is our home, and I want it to always remain so." I smiled, my heart full of peace and pride. I took her hand and felt the strength in those small fingers. When we returned to the house, I stood on the porch watching the fields shine under the sun. I thought about the days of pain, the sleepless nights, the moments I thought I would break. But now, with Madison by my side, I knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Justice may come late, but punishment is never absent. And for me, the sweetest revenge wasn't seeing Ethan punished or Valerie disappear. The sweetest revenge was seeing my daughter regain her freedom, stand up firmly, and move forward with confidence. After all that has happened, the most important message I want to leave with you is this. In life, truth and trust cannot be traded for anything. Perhaps blind love, naivete, or pressure from others may cause us to lose our way, but only with the courage to face the truth can we protect ourselves and those we love. Betrayal can knock us down, but it also forces us to mature, to value honesty and sincere love. And most importantly, family, when built on trust and true affection, will always be the place we can return to, the support to get up after any fall. If you've ever been through something like this, you're not alone. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. Thanks for listening. Life can get messy sometimes, but remember, you're never truly alone. If this story touched you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your thoughts mean more than you know.